Hi, welcome everyone to our Sunday virtual event series hosted by the NFA. And I'm Millie, I'm the immersion manager, and we're so excited to have you all join us this afternoon. And our speaker, Amanda, is here, and we're so excited to have her to talk about this very important topic. So Amanda, if you want to just take it away, you can go ahead and start.
Perfect. Thank you so much. I'm really excited to be here to discuss on this topic. I hope everybody can hear me okay. Good, perfect. Okay. So today we'll be talking about performance health, specifically in the topic of repetitive stress or repetitive strain injuries. Their types and also ways to prevent and just to kind of keep that from preventing us to lead our best lives. So before I have a PowerPoint presentation to go through with you that's going to give a little bit of information, and then I will play some important stretches, strengthening exercises, etc. And if you have any questions as I'm going through, feel free to put it in the chat box. So I am a flutist, of course, and I perform. I teach both privately and at the collegiate level. I'm also a personal trainer and a corrective exercise specialist, but I feel like the most important education I've received on this topic is my own personal experience with this with this topic, my own overuse injury. That it was probably about 10 years ago by now that I had the onset of it and recovered and in the maintenance stage of it. So I feel very, very passionate about this topic because of that, because I want to help other musicians, other teachers to educate on this topic to not only help themselves but also future generations of students. So I will share my PowerPoint here. So hopefully everybody can see that. So I do have, like I mentioned a little bit, what our goals are for this session. We're going to discuss and talk about some common repetitive strain or repetitive stress injuries for flute players. We'll discuss some faulty movement patterns that can lead to those overuse injuries. And anytime you see a capital R, capital S, capital I kind of use that as an acronym for repetitive stress injury throughout my presentation. We'll discuss a little bit how emotions and our mental, well-being can play a role in actually developing an RSI. And then lastly, demonstrate some helpful exercises and stretches. If you have space around you while those videos are playing, I invite you to perform those along with me. It's me in the videos. And then I also have a little bit on posture with the flute. So if you have your instrument nearby and want to try those, along with me as well, I absolutely invite you to do that. So I just wanted to add this slide right at the beginning because I just wanted to show you how amazing our bodies are. We have more than 600 muscles in our body, and these are just a fraction of them. And whenever I was recovering from my RSI, I just became very fascinated with the muscles, the nerves, our bones, everything that helps us move and, be musicians, be people. It just is extremely fascinating to me. It's a very delicate balance between muscles, bones, and nerves. And unfortunately, that can become unbalanced. And in the cases of some repetitive strain injuries, this can happen. So some muscles can become tight and overworked, and some can be on the weaker side and not as used. And when this happens, some muscles may take over for another set of muscles, and that's not what we want. We call that altered muscle recruitment, and we want to avoid that. They're meant to work together, and one muscle not moving in its optimal way can unfortunately cause a chain reaction throughout the body, which we'll talk a little bit more about in a second. So this slide shows the most common causes for an RSI. And as flutists, these are our most common causes as well. Continuous repetitive movements. For us, it's the finger, the hand, or the arm. Long hours of, maybe practicing in a practice room, a long hours in, ensemble rehearsals, lack of variety or a lack of breaks, just kind of, everybody is guilty of it. Me, for sure, going, just full on, on a piece of music or an etude and you're all of a sudden you look at the clock and it's been like an hour and a half and you're like, oh my goodness, I haven't even, taken a drink yet. Or so that unfortunately is a potential cause. Too much force on the instrument, tension, too much force, faulty technique. You want to make sure that you are allowing yourself to set up correctly in terms of holding the instrument, hand positioning, posture, just overall. That's also a risk factor. Our environment, the temperature of the room, lack of space in the room, if it's too cold, if it's too hot. Also, if it's a high stress environment, that is going to contribute to muscle tension and just kind of tensing up, which, does not help those other risk factors. And then lastly, our basic fitness level. Our bodies are meant to move. So if you tend to have a more sedentary lifestyle, the muscles may not have the opportunity to move in the way that is going to work, the best for you. And I'll talk a little bit more later about this, that it's important to keep our overall general fitness level in check. So these are the most common risk factors in terms of an RSI. And then here are the most common types. Of course, this is not a complete list. This is just the most common types of RSI. carpal tunnel syndrome, which I'm sure many of you have heard of. It's a condition where the medial nerve gets compressed in the wrist area. So there are three major nerves that come out of our neck and down our arm. And the medial nerve is what passes through the wrist, the carpal tunnel in the wrist. It's a very narrow passageway. And when there's a compression that happens in that passageway, we can feel it in our fingers. We can feel it in our, in our wrist. We might get pain. The median nerve affects some of the index finger, the thumb, the middle finger, and part of the ring finger as well. The next one on there is cubital tunnel syndrome, and being transparent with you, that's the one that I suffered from. And that is very similar to carpal tunnel in that it involves the compression of a nerve, but this time it's a different nerve, the ulnar nerve, and where it passes through the cubital tunnel in the elbow. So you might get pain again, down the arm. The ulnar nerve, if you've ever, been walking somewhere and you hit your elbow against a table or a wall and it really hurts, and you say, "Oh, I hit my funny bone." That's not the funny bone, that's the ulnar nerve. So it's very sensitive. When you have compression here, you might feel symptoms in the ring finger and part of the pinky finger, and that's where I had most of my symptoms. So the one after that is tendonitis. And that's a catch-all term for an inflammation, an irritation of a tendon. And a tendon is a thick band of tissue that connects muscle to bone. And two common types of tendonitis, it can happen anywhere in the body, but the most common, and especially for us as flutists, we have tennis elbow and golfer's elbow, and all that identifies as which side of the body. We have the lateral and then the medial. So it just signifies which side of the elbow is affected. And then tenosynovitis, it's related to tendonitis, but in this regard, it's the irritation or the inflammation of the outer covering of the tendon. And a very, very common type of tenosynovitis is de Quervain's tenosynovitis. And that happens at the base of the thumb. And we as musicians, as flutists, are pretty susceptible to that just because of our, positioning in the right hand and also the repetitiveness of the movement in the left hand. And then after that is bursitis. And bursitis is the inflammation of the space between the joints, the soft tissue area between the joints. And that's called the bursa. And most often this occurs at the hip, but it can occur at any joint. And then lastly on the list is something called thoracic outlet syndrome. And it's not one condition, but multiple conditions together. And this involves pressure on the nerves, and it could also involve the blood vessels in the area of the thoracic outlet. And this is a very narrow space in between the collarbone and the first rib. There's a lot going on in that area. And I'm pointing to my left side because for us as flutists, our left arm goes across and it gets kind of crunchy and all squished in there. So that might be a risk factor for that type of injury. So like I said, this is just a snapshot of the most common types of RSIs. Of course, it's not a complete list. And the symptoms of which they're going to start pretty mild, but if not addressed, they'll gradually get a little bit worse. So it's important to address them ASAP. If you have any question at all that you might be feeling some symptoms, you want to get that addressed. So far, we've discussed the more physical components of an RSI. I wanted to briefly take a look at, I almost skipped over this. These are the symptoms, the most common symptoms that you might feel. You might feel some pain, some tenderness or swelling in the fingers, the wrists, or the arms, even the shoulders. You might have this heavy feeling, tingling, numbness, especially if it involves a nerve. That was my first clue whenever I knew it was time to go to the doctor. I was feeling tingling and numbness in my ring and my pinky finger. You might notice, this joint's not moving as well as it should be, or it has been. And then you might also have a little bit of loss of sensation, or your grip strength is not quite up to par as well. So like I said, these tend to start very mild, but will progress if not addressed. So like I said, if any questions, it's better to be, err on the side of caution than to, try to ignore them and, power through. So just a quick note on anxiety and our mental well-being. Musicians deal with anxiety quite a bit because of just the nature of our craft. I put a very general definition of what anxiety is right there. It's a feeling of worry, of nervousness or unease, typically about an upcoming event or an event with an uncertain outcome. And of course, as musicians, we deal with that all the time with performances, maybe interviews, auditions. So we know what it's like to feel anxious. And it's a natural response. It's a natural response to a perceived threat. And we call that the fight or flight response. But unfortunately, our bodies aren't capable of discerning between nervousness at an audition or getting anxious over being chased by a bear and turning into lunch. It's like, it's still that same kind of, feeling, the fight or flight. So right here on this slide are some physical manifestations of anxiety, which can contribute to, being a risk factor in developing an RSI, especially that last one. So you might experience a little bit of trembling. Maybe your hands get cold, or maybe your breathing becomes more rapid or restricted. You might sweat, a little bit of perspiration, dry mouth. You might get a little bit of a dry mouth. And then I put this one in bold and underlined because this applies very directly to the topic of the physical part of it. And that is the muscle tension, tensing up and, feeling stressed. So if you feel like, and I forgot to mention at the beginning, I wrote with all of this, this whole project with my own, injury and, becoming a personal trainer and a corrective exercise specialist. I also have a nutrition certification, but I wrote a book and I developed an online course. I have a podcast, I have a blog. And one of the big things I talk about, especially in my book, is anxiety. And I also give many just ways to combat anxiety, coping mechanisms. So I could do an entire hour on just anxiety and coping, as far as, being a musician is concerned. So if you feel like anxiety is an issue, that could be, contributing to muscle tension, that you might have, that could be a risk factor for an RSI, try and seek out some ways to cope, especially if you're, especially prone. It's extremely important. So on the next slide, and I just have a few more slides before we get to the videos. The human movement system, this is just everything, our entire movement system, the muscles, the bones, the nerves. It's just a complex, well-orchestrated system of many different components. I think of it as like a choir or an orchestra. And in an ensemble, we rely on one another to create the most effective performance. But if one section is having a little bit of trouble, then the entire performance will be affected. So it is with our human movement system. It's just all about balance. And that's the most important thing. And the most important, or the topic of posture comes into play here. And posture is that alignment of all those components of the HMS at any given moment. It's fluid, whether we're sitting, whether we're standing, whether we're walking, from one point A to point B. So what's tricky is that if there is something wrong, an impairment or an injury in one part of the HMS, it will likely cause an issue somewhere else. And that's where we talked about the altered muscle recruitment at the beginning, where one muscle takes over for a weak muscle and everything just gets kind of, out of whack. And then we could also, in more severe cases, we might have movement impairment, maybe to where you're not walking as well as you could, or your shoulders aren't feeling, like they are, and you can't, move your shoulder blades to put yourself in a good posture. Those are just some examples of things that can be affected. So all of this, oh, here's my video. I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself, but this is the video where I talk about posture in terms of holding the flute and positioning yourself in a good way in front of the music stand, as well as sitting in a chair. And I go through what's called the 5-point checklist, where we check our feet, we check our knees, we check our hips, we check our shoulders, and then finally our head. So I'm in a smaller room today, but I made this video so you can, kind of see how that could be incorporated into our playing, being properly balanced with proper posture. So I want to make sure that I shared my sound so you can hear. And like I said, if you have your flute and you're able to stand up and do this with me, please do, because it's important. It's important, to be able to be in a healthy posture to play without pain and injury. So here we go. So now, oops. You know that poor posture has the ability to influence the entire body. A misalignment in one area can cause an injury in another. Good posture is critical, not just for us as musicians, but in everyday life. Among other things, poor posture can make the abdominal muscles weak and tight. And for us, of course, that's not ideal. So, and the muscles then would not be in their optimal positions to allow for the most efficient movement, whether it be, performing or breathing. So I'm going to share with you my 5-point checklist. And this will allow you to kind of check yourself before a practice session, a performance, and this can be applicable to standing or seated. But I'll talk you through all of that. So we're going to start with the feet. So they're going to be shoulder width apart, facing forward. You don't want to angle them out or inward. It's nice to sometimes take a slightly staggered stance to allow for a weight, shifting back and forth while you're, playing. You don't want to really stand there kind of rigid. So feet shoulder width apart, staggered stance. So that's checkpoint 1, the feet. Number 2 are the knees. They're going to be slightly bent. I say soft. You don't want to lock them. And you want to keep them in line with the toes. So you don't want to shift either way, that way. So feet, knees, hips, and pelvis. You want to keep those in a neutral position. I know some people can do like that, or when you get stressed, you might do that. Just a nice neutral position. So feet, knees, hips, shoulders is number 4. Are level, not elevated, or rounded forward. How oftentimes when we get stressed or when we work or practice for long periods of time, our shoulders tend to round forward. So I want you to think of keeping them rolled down and back and just relaxed. Our last checkpoint is our head. So you want that to be nice and balanced on the spine in a neutral position. Think the ears and the shoulder in line, not protruding forward or tilted to one side. Just a comfortable balance. So, one more time. Feet shoulder width apart, staggered stance, knees soft, not locked, hips and pelvis in a neutral position, shoulders not elevated, down and back, and the head balanced nice on the spine, not protruding forward, the ears in line with the shoulder. So now I want to show you how to apply all of this to flute playing. So if you can imagine, or if you have your flute with you right there, we want to apply that good posture to playing. So what you want to do is you want to get in your good posture stance. And just allow your the arms to kind of relax at the sides. You're going to bring your flute up to you. So once you find that good posture stance and you feel comfortable, the flute's going to come up to you. You don't have to adapt to it. It comes right up to you. So how does this apply to the music stand? So often I see students especially play, and this might be I'll stand this way, a marching band thing where they feel like they have to be square on the stand and everything needs to be straight. So I'm going to challenge that thought. I'm not saying that it's bad, for a marching band. But whenever you have a stand in front of you, it could cause a little bit of tension, a little bit of problem. So keeping in mind that good posture, you're going to put your flute up. And wherever your head is looking, that's where the music stand's going to go. So, and I know a lot of you have probably heard that instead of being straight on to the music stand, you should have your feet at a diagonal. This is very comparable. So wherever your head is, that's where the music stand should be. So I think mine right now is a little far to the left, so I'm going to adjust it. Also, another thing to think about is distance to the music stand. You kind of want to be a little bit back further so you can have some space to move. And you want it to be tall enough so you're not craning or tilting your head. You want to keep that good balance. So practice that. Practice the placement of your music stand. Don't feel like you have to adapt to it. Place it where you want or where you are. So one more thing, I'm going to show you how to adapt all of that to the chair. As flutists, we are not gifted with a lot of space because of our horizontal nature of our instrument. So you walk into a rehearsal and your chair is right there, directly behind the music stand. So you come, you take a seat. So oftentimes I feel, again, looking straight on to the music stand puts a lot of stress on the shoulders and the neck, especially on the left side. So what I tell my students to do, if you have no benefit of space to start moving things around, move yourself. So again, same idea with the feet. You're going to move your entire body and sit a little bit at an angle. If the music stand has to stay where it is, typically that's where your head is going to look. So it takes that pressure off of the left shoulder. And if you try it, if you kind of play with both positions, you might be able to feel a difference. So practice this way as opposed to this way. And you should definitely feel a difference. Okay? So I hope that demonstration is helpful in terms of how you will be, you know, utilizing that positioning to establish a good and healthy posture, whether you're in a chair or standing up. And I noticed a question in the chat for tenosynovitis. Yes, it's very similar. That trigger thumb. It's yes. It might be a more severe form of it, because with the inflammation and those types of the trigger finger, that where it gets kind of locked. But yes, it's more commonly known, or a more severe version of tenosynovitis. Yeah, which is what we don't want. We don't want our tendons to be locked into place. So, let's see. This is our cumulative injury cycle, and I'll go briefly through this. Just going back to that idea of cause and effect, and it's unfortunate that it's a cycle, and it's hard to break, but not impossible. We want to break it, and we want to work to break it. It might take a little detective work, or it might be, like a plain, like a plain problem to solve. But so this whole cycle begins with a tissue trauma. Let's use the tendonitis as an example. That overuse injury, that the muscles inflamed, or sore, the tendon is inflamed. So it's a natural thing. Our body, senses an injury. The inflammation response is a natural thing. It's when it gets chronic, is when it becomes a very bad issue. So that inflammation will then trigger the muscles to spasm, which just elicits pain and swelling. And the body, let's see. Michelle says, oh, wow, you're recovering from overstretching the left middle finger. Ooh, yeah. Okay. Yeah, it's so important. It's a lot of things that we don't think of. Those little tiny tendons, and in our hands, and it's so important to be aware. Yeah. And it's that pain and that inflammation, that's our body coming to the rescue, in an attempt to repair. So then in that way, it'll form little adhesions in the muscle. We might call them knots. You could definitely feel where they occur. The other day, I still work with a massage therapist, and the muscles in my forearm are insanely sore because he was going after those knots, those little trigger points, those adhesions that form. We don't want those in there, because the muscles will begin to, if they get severe enough, or depending on where they are, we might move in different ways. So maybe we don't move our wrist like we normally would, or we're bracing or so, and that's not what we want either. So, and this then could potentially cause, another muscle imbalance, which then could cause another tissue trauma. So, it's like detective work. I've realized, and so often, like a lot of doctors tend to, like in my experience, I wrote about it in my the book that I published, that the very first doctor sat across from his desk and wanted to bring the scalpel out. And there are times when, surgery is extremely necessary, when it's been, too long, too much, and you just need it. And that is, absolutely a necessary thing. But I like, at that early stage, you know, I wanted to be a little bit more of a detective and ask more questions. And so, and this whole cycle, it could be multiple things. So, it's important also to be your own advocate. So if something doesn't feel right, you know, let the doctor, let the physical therapist, let the massage therapist, any professional, let them know. It's so important to advocate, for yourself and say, no, I think, can we look at this? Can we look at that? Um, so, um, corrective exercise, this is where I went to, and through the National Academy of Sports Medicine, I became certified, not only as a personal trainer, but also a corrective exercise specialist. It's like it's on the boundary of physical therapy. I'm not, licensed in physical therapy, but I can identify a dysfunction, a movement dysfunction, develop a plan of action, and then implement an integrated corrective exercise strategy. So, and I'll show you a few of these today. And these are the strategies. If you've ever heard of a foam roller or self-myofascial release, that is so awesome in terms of, working on those trigger points, working on those adhesions, or even a tennis ball or a lacrosse ball. I have a tennis ball in my flute bag, and I, if I'm extra sore, I'll put it along my shoulder blade, and I'll just put pressure between myself, the ball, and then a wall. So that's a topic for another session, but I'll show you some stretches and then also some general exercises for strengthening. These are just very basic, just because the more intricate directed ones can be more case specific. All stretches, all strengthening exercises can be adapted to the individual. So if there are some of these that you can't do today, no worries. They can be adapted for you by a fitness professional or a physical therapist. So exercise is just so important for the musician. Like I said, the overall balance. So I'm going to show you a few strengthening, and then we'll move to the stretches. So this is a basic body weight squat, and this is excellent for the leg muscles, and it's also great for the core, which is our our center of gravity, and what's extremely important for posture as well. So I feel like the leg muscles, they help to absolutely support the core, and they work together. So if you have room, if you have time, definitely do these with me. So you'll have your feet a little bit wider than shoulder width. And then you're going to keep your chest lifted. You can put the arms out in front of you to promote that. And then you're going to lower down like you're going to sit in a chair. Just be careful to keep the knees at a 90-degree angle. You don't want the knees to go ahead of the toes, just to protect the knees. So I'll play this. And then if you want to do this with me, please do. And the next one is a lunge, also a lower body exercise. It's going to work the very similar muscles to the squat, but it's going to help for balance and coordination as well. So we're going to go, you're going to take, it doesn't matter which leg, you're going to bring it forward, and you're going to bend each leg to a 90-degree angle. So again, the front leg, you want to keep that right above the ankle, the knee, right above the ankle. Don't allow it to jut forward, just to protect the knee. So those are two of countless lower body exercises. They're just barely scratching the surface. I'm going to keep going up to the upper body. This works our shoulders, which are very important for us, as we play. This is going to work the top of the shoulder, and then a little bit of the arms as well, and even the core, because this one goes overhead. Any exercise that goes overhead is going to challenge the core. So in here, I use a pair of very light dumbbells, but I had a client who grabbed a couple of soup cans. You make do with what you have. You don't have to go out and buy all this fancy equipment. We carry around enough equipment as musicians. So she just, grabbed a couple of soup cans and, worked this way. So you're going to take the dumbbells at each shoulder, palms outward, and you're going to slowly raise them over your head, pausing briefly at the top. And when you're done, you're going to bring them back down to the beginning position. So do this along with me if you can. Okay, I'm going to skip over the next one just because it's also about an overhead press, but it adds a bicep curl to it. I want to move on to the next set of shoulder exercises, because there are three muscles in the shoulder. this exercise is going to work the front. So you're going to hold the dumbbells with your palms facing backwards, and then as you raise, they're going to be facing downward, and you're just going to bring them right back down to the starting position. So here's the front raise. And then we do the same thing, but out to the side. We get the side of the shoulder. So these next two exercises are called a row. And this first one, I'm going to show it to you bent over. But I once had a client who wasn't able to do that because of pressure in her eye. So I also show the standing row. Like I said, all of these exercises can be adapted based on, the individual and their needs. So this one is the bent over row. And like I said, this will get the back muscles, the upper back. As you do these, you want to squeeze the shoulder blades together, down and back. And then rows standing upright with an exercise band. Same thing. You're going to want to pull almost to your rib cage and then squeeze the shoulder blades down and back. And you want to keep the tension on that band as well. Nice, slow movements. And then the last upper body exercise I want to show you, like I said, I'm just barely scratching the surface, is for the upper back. And you're going to be doing letters. You're going to form an I, a Y, a T, and a W. And that's going to help to strengthen the muscles around the shoulder blade, the muscles in the upper back, kind of like below the neck. So here's just a little example of that. So I know I'm nearing my time. I had a section of stretches to show you, but I'm gonna go all the way here. This is my contact information. I just wanted to leave a couple minutes at the end if you had any questions. I also have a little outline of today's presentation. that list all the names of the exercises and also the stretches I wanted to show you. But you can also, if you have any questions at all, you can reach out to me. There's my email, and I also have a website, performancehealthformusicians.com. This hour always goes so fast because I always want to have so much information. But I see some questions. Beth asked if you might have very weak muscles, can this be modified to be done on the wall? Was it that first exercise that you were referring to? Oh, the squat. Yes, absolutely. You can get a stability ball, an exercise ball, and put that against the wall. I think they sell them in different sizes. It's just a big exercise ball, and then you can kind of lean up against it and then use that as the support as you lower and go up. So yes, absolutely. Yeah, I love that all of these exercises, they can be modified. There's never a reason, not to do one. Yeah. So Amy has significant shoulder issues. Okay. Amy, have you been to a doctor? Like, have they done any sort of imaging and all that? No. Okay. Yeah. If it's you do yoga, Pilates, and strength training. Yeah. An awesome exercise for the rotator cuff muscles. There are 4 of those, and they're stabilizer muscles. They're not necessarily strength. Lay on your side, on a flat surface with a dumbbell, and you're going to put a tiny pillow or a rolled up towel right underneath the upper arm, and you're going to kind of use that as a support. And I'm going to try and show you this, but imagine doing this, but on the let me stop share so I can see. Imagine doing this, but like on your side. So that's an awesome, it's called the external rotation. That's a good exercise for the rotator cuff. I think I froze. It looks like I froze, but okay, good. I thought I froze for a second. But definitely look into that if you want to, strengthen the rotator cuff muscles. Oh, Amy, yeah. I was doing, let me get my microphone out of here. If you're laying on your side and you have a pillow here or a rolled up towel, you'll do this. You want to keep the upper arm stable, and you'll do this. And you'll really feel it in here. So does that make sense a little bit? I know it's hard for me. Yeah, give that a try. So, all right. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you so much, Amanda, for your awesome presentation. I will definitely be doing some of the stretches. I definitely overdid it in grad school, like 10
Oh,
hours a day with practicing and ensembles and rehearsals and
yes.
chamber music and stuff. So
Oh, yes.
but yeah, thank you so much. And I did put the workshop outline in the chat for everyone. The replay will be available on our YouTube channel and our website, and I'll also link this document there. So I hope everybody has a great rest of your weekend, and thank you, Amanda, again.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Bye.